Shawn, how's it going, man?
Pretty good, man. Pretty good.
We were just been talking for an hour previously, so it's kind of it is kind of awkward if I, just start talking like,
It's good to get some conversation going, get a little warmed up.
Yes, yeah, that's true. That's true. Well, I'm curious. So one thing I like talking about Shawn is he's a pretty sharp guy. Actually, he's very proactive into going into mobile app development. He's currently a front end engineer at HYLA Mobile, working with I believe React Native and React, right?
Yeah. So so currently I work with. I'm a software engineer. I work with. I mainly work on the front end, which is building basically the UI of web applications and mobile applications. I use, like you said, React as the kind of library for building the web. So I build single page apps, and then I also use React Native, which is like a cross-platform technology to build mobile apps. It's kind of an alternative to building it in native iOS or native Android. So right now I'm working with those two main technologies in my job. I started with React Native first, about I think was it 2017, 2018. So about 3.5 years of experience, something like that, of React Native. And then I've been working with React for this past year at my job, and also my prior role. I started learning React, just more web development, last year when I was a contractor. So I've been working with these two main technologies recently. I've also worked with, when I started software engineering, I started off working with iOS. So I used to build iOS apps using the Apple APIs. I use Swift as the language. And I use Xcode as the IDE. So I started with that for about 2
I'm sorry. No, I'm sorry, because previously we were just talking about all these cool stuff about the Star Wars food. It's just kind of like a weird transition.
Yeah, it makes the video interesting, because
I know.
It makes it more engaging because it's a topic that we could get onto, but
eventually, about your video editing pursuits. But
we could talk about that too. We could talk about that
eventually. We'll get to that.
I think I guess if we're focusing on my background now and about software engineering, then that's basically worked about 2.5 years, 2 years in iOS, and then about 3.5, 4 years in React and React Native. So
cool. But I'm curious, before you started out as a biomedical engineer in a way, you even took some intern opportunities in BME, but you chose mobile app development instead. What made you choose that decision?
Yeah. There was a variety of factors. One of the biggest reasons why I did it. There was one specific event or situation that happened in college where it really kind of started to get me thinking about mobile apps as a career. But basically, when I was in my biomedical engineering program, when I was a senior, my last year, we had a seminar where we would have industry leaders come in. And at the time, I was senior year of college. You're really thinking of everybody, all the seniors are thinking about, hey, where am I going to get my next job, right? Or they might even have a job already, right, lined up, right? So I'm sitting there all right, I gotta get my next, I gotta get my first job out of college, right?
Same here. I had to kill. Yeah.
So with the current job opportunities in biomedical, a lot of the jobs that usually biomedical engineers would get, bachelors of biomedical engineering. A lot of those opportunities were something that's not very interesting to me. For example, a lot of biomedical engineers went to regulatory or quality engineering, and a lot of them worked for these big medical device companies like Medtronic or Boston Scientific, which are great companies, but it's just there's specific roles that historically that biomedical engineers were kind of taking at the time, and it just wasn't very interesting. I wanted to do something a little bit more, I guess, more with development and more creative. So for me, technology was always interesting to me from the get-go. I was always interested in smartphones. I would sometimes even upgrade every year. I think my dad, who's been a software engineer, his whole career, influenced me on kind of that hobby of just being interested in smartphones. So I kind of took that, idea of like, hey, like, I'm interested in smartphones. I'm interested in technology. And also the idea that in this seminar, coming back to the seminar, I forgot to talk about that, but basically in the seminar, one of the I think it was, I can't remember if he was a manager or director. He was just some industry leader working for one of the big tech company or big medical device companies, came in and was presenting his presentation. And in his presentation, he basically said like one of the biggest, one thing that's going to be really trending in the future for the medical device industry is mobile apps. So when I saw that, I was like, oh, that's really cool. At the same time, I also discovered, and I think my dad kind of introduced me to the concept in the first place, was I discovered that you could take courses online. You could take like how to learn iOS app development online and turn that into a career, which is absolutely insane to me at the time. I was like, you can just learn online and then turn that into a full-time career, like making like it's almost like six figures, like some software engineers are making six figures right away, but you still make very good money. You still make very good money making mobile apps. I didn't even know like people were getting employed full time to do this. So I was like, hey, like let me try this out. Like this seems very interesting. And I didn't do a lot of, to be honest, I didn't do a lot of coding back in before that. I think I did like in high school. I did a little Visual Basic. And I didn't really do much coding after that. We did MATLAB in our biomedical engineering program.
Yeah, I know that one.
To be honest, I wasn't a fan of at the
Same
time, mainly because of its applications. I wasn't really into, what MATLAB was used for. But what attracted me about mobile app development was more of just the building part. I don't think I was never somebody that really, really loved programming to its core. I wasn't obsessed with programming, but I saw programming as a tool you could use to kind of build these products, which I was very interested in, like build these applications, which is really cool to me. So,
true.
At the time, I was kind of weighing. People might ask like, "Hey, why did you choose iOS over Android?" I didn't even have a MacBook Pro. I didn't even have any Apple products. Like it's funny because I never owned an Apple product before I started iOS development.
Okay.
I was all about Android, all about Windows. So I never had no Mac. I had no iPhones. By the time that happened, I was like, the reason why, people might ask, hey, why didn't you choose Android? Because you can do Android on Windows. You can do Android with your Android phone. But I think one of the reasons I chose iOS was because, first of all, there was a lot of courses online for iOS development and Android, but the iOS ones were just more attractive to me at the time. Secondly, the language Swift just came out. So I started around 2016. It came out in 2014. So it was still like trending at the time. So I was like, and I heard a lot of good things about the language, how it was a big improvement over Objective-C. So I was like, hey, like I think it's a good language to start out with. And then also just like, the whole, I guess like also another point of why I chose iOS is because, what I was hearing at the time, I was reading online was people were saying that iOS is more profitable. Like a lot of times, the iOS apps usually make more money for the companies because a lot of iOS users end up paying more than Android users do. So I was like, yeah. And also I did research that and hear that also they were very in demand too. That was a big reason why I got into it. Because like a lot of, app developers, not all of them want to buy a MacBook Pro, like, because you have to have a MacBook Pro to run Xcode. So a lot of developers either don't want to buy a MacBook Pro, don't have it. They don't have that ability to even create an iOS app. Like you can create an Android app with Windows, and a lot of people have Windows. So it's like, for me, I thought that was a good way for me to get in the market in a high demand market at the time. And I also heard that from my employer when I got employed. They said, a lot of the employers and recruiters were saying, hey, like it's hard to find iOS developers in the area at the time. So I was like, it's a good sign. It's a good sign to go into that field. So I wasn't the biggest Apple fan, to be honest.
Okay.
We're going to Apple, what do they call? what is that? What's that term called when you're like in that cult, that Apple mentality?
Is there really a certain name? Apple, Apple.
It's like an Apple. It's like a term for like you're basically.
I don't know.
Apple, like you're in their cult. I wasn't in that, okay, but I appreciate their products. I do like Xcode. I think it's great. I think they have good tooling as well with Swift, but yeah. So that's basically how I got into it. The way I got kind of employed was the way I got my first job. Basically, was so I started around. I think it was I started around fall of 2016 or 2015 actually. It's my last year of college. I started learning it, taking a Udemy course.
Well, it's like $20 or $90. How much is a Udemy course?
Oh, it was only $15 because they were running promo. So $15. So $15. So a lot of hard work though. Like So basically, it was $15. Bought the course. There was an instructor named Mark Price at the time who was pretty hot at the time. I don't know if he's still hot. He runs a company called DevSlopes. Shout out to DevSlopes and Mark Price for making my career. But hopefully maybe they'll see this someday. But took his course. He had a really good course in the beginning. Like I think he covered very practical. He kind of have a more practical approach of teaching people how to code and get ready for a job. In terms of like what I mean by practical, I mean like he didn't just teach like the theory of like, or he didn't just focus on Swift, the language. What he did is he gets the students engaged in building like real applications or like clones. They'll build like Uber clone or Twitter clone or etc.
Yeah. It's almost like a portfolio project in itself, right?
Yeah, you're building almost like a portfolio project for yourself. So what I did was I worked on I thought it would be a good portfolio app. I just built like a Twitter like application. At the time it was called like what is it called? Post Me Fun, yes. Which is not on the App Store anymore.
It's still there actually. I was looking.
It's not the App Store right now because I took it down, but it was there for like 2.5 years. I used it for 2.5, 3 years. I used it for like, getting jobs, but that was my major portfolio app. In the course, basically I had worked on it with the course content, but then over time I kind of just build it off. I kind of built my own features in it. So it was basically like a simple Twitter app. You can log in, you have your profile, and then you have a feed, and you can like different posts and blah blah blah. So
actually, more questions about that. Like, how do you distinguish a good Udemy course? But sometimes, of course, the ratings. But like, is there some certain fundamentals that could actually take you to a job, whereas it's just just something to follow along and have fun learning?
Yeah, that's a question because I've been thinking about a little bit about that myself. Like, what would be the best course or course structure or content to get somebody who's like never done programming to land a job, to land their first software job. But I think to evaluate different courses, the first thing I look at is like, what are the top, like the most bought courses, right? Like what are the most, like, in terms of like purchases, which courses have been purchased the most? Secondly, I look at reviews too. Like, what are the highest reviewed ones, right? So I take those in consideration. I look at their, I look at like not just like the exact review, what the number is, like if it's 4.5, 5 stars. I look at like I read the reviews as well and go down the review section. I read other people's reviews, or essentially they're like testimonials, but like certain people will be like, hey, this is a great beginner course, or could be like this course is too complicated, or this course is amazing for like a certain level, what level you're at, beginner, advanced programmer, etc. So I look at those two. Those are the two big things that I first look forward to, but I think you can dig deeper into that. A lot of times courses will even have like short previews. You can even like, take like maybe the first video, like they'll have, I think there's like usually the first or maybe the first few videos are available maybe for free. So you can look at that. Another thing is you can look at the instructor. I look into the instructor's profile and be like, hey, what do they do? Right? What's their background? Did they work at Google or something? Are they just some random name? Like,
True. And some of the instructors have YouTube channels too. You can check out
their YouTube channels really good as well. Like, like Maximilian. So like you can look at their YouTube channel, you can see their content there for free automatically, which is really good. So you can use that to evaluate. I mean, honestly, it's not simple though. It's not that easy to decide, hey, this is the course, like this is the best course to land me a job. It's not that simple because again, when you're starting out, you don't even know what's the best content, right? To learn. You don't know what the correct content is. But yeah, those are the main things I look for when I'm selecting a course. Reviews, how popular is the course in Udemy right now compared to the other competitors? If they have YouTube channel, if they, I look at their background, etc. Another thing that you could do is, I would advise, is not just rely on the course itself, but use other resources. Like you can use like Free Code Camp, you can use other YouTube instructors, right? And you can look at what they're teaching as well and see if there's maybe similarities, differences. Also, even just look up, hey, like what's the best way to prepare myself as a programmer? What skills do I need? Right? There's a lot of things on the internet you can find from different instructors. Like for example, for like React or front end development, I looked up when I was interviewing for that type of job. I looked up, hey, like what are the skills I need? Like what is the skills I need for the job? Specifically, like I wasn't just going to rely on one course to teach me it because they might not cover everything. And I found some like GitHub repositories where people would put like an entire flowchart. I think maybe I sent this to you, Josh, but like there was like an entire like flowchart somebody built out with like every little like skill you would need, to become like I don't know, like a beginner front end developer, or like to get like a iOS engineering job, right? There's like these huge like basically.
Wait, hold on. Do you have an idea what the name of it is? Maybe I could like share a screen and show what it looks like out of curiosity.
Yeah. Let me look up front end engineer.
Yeah, that's a good question too, because of course you look at the reviews and if you could build a project. I think like a question I had is, are there certain design patterns and fundamentals that you should think about when purchasing a course? But my thoughts are that maybe it comes after you build the project, you get to understand how you actually apply them. But I don't know, should you consider that too in the course, or is that something that you should just research yourself? Get used to reading documentation from Android library or the Xcode. I'm just trying to.
You're just trying to figure out like the learning.
Yeah, she jump to the dense part a little bit sometimes. Occasionally, like dip your toe into the because sometimes looking at the documentation library, it's
a lot.
It's frightening. Yeah, sometimes
it's a lot. I think the first thing, if you want to learn, for example, like iOS, right? Like learn basic programming with Swift, right? Like how to do for loops, if statements, while loops, etc. Right? Learn how that works, just the basic level, which a lot of courses actually just cover in the beginning, anyways.
Yeah, that's right.
Or like JavaScript for front end, but learn that, and then. If you're taking iOS, you learn the language, and then now the next thing you got to do is you got to learn how to use Xcode, right? Because that's the IDE you're going to use. So just like go in there, get familiar yourself. Like, how do I take this language, write it in this IDE, and create an app off of it, right? How do I build the app? Like, what's the process? There's also like a building process. Like once you write your code, right, you need to compile your source code, build it, output it into a file where you can run the app. So like that is important too to think about, like to try to learn about. Sometimes it's tricky though. Sometimes with the documentation, as you mentioned, it can get complicated. So like
yeah, exactly.
It's what I usually do when I'm trying to learn something new is like I'll look at the docs. I'll take a look at it. If it's too confusing for me, or it's just something that's just not too confusing, but I guess like it's harder to learn off of it. I literally look on YouTube and I say, how do I do this? Right? How do I, like, for example, like I want to, show an image. I want to render an image and I want to download this file from the internet. I look on YouTube, on iOS development, how to show an image in my iOS app. How do I render this image, right? And then there might be a YouTuber telling you the steps, or you can look on just the internet. A lot of people write articles, on different websites like Medium. There's another big another website called, I think it's like dev.io or dev.com.
Dev.com. Interesting.
I'm trying to look it up right now.
Oops, there's not a dev.
It's dev.to, which is really, really
TO. Interesting. Never heard of that.
Yeah, dev.to is good too. Free Code Camp is also a good resource, which I didn't use that often when I started learning, but it's also, I think it's a great resource to start out. But yeah, you can take a look at that because it has a lot of cool articles and stuff. The thing about it is it can be a little bit, I think it could be a lot for the beginner programmer because there's just articles just talking about a lot of different things. You know, like there are certain articles and certain videos that don't really help you that much. For example, like especially when you land your first job, it might be cool. Like if someone says like, "Hey, I created a," for example, I don't want to knock on this project because I think it's a cool project, but I just don't think it's the best project to build for your portfolio. Is like how to build like a Flappy Bird using iOS. Like it's a cool concept. It absolutely is a cool concept. I think it'll help you learn, but I don't know if it'll get you prepared to get a job. And it's not something that you necessarily want to showcase. I think the main point is don't just rely on the course. The main point to getting the job is the portfolio, right? Build something like an app or a website. Ideally, that's most like the company that you want to work for. You know, if you want to work for Uber, build like an Uber-like app, maybe like a clone or something, something maybe similar to it, or if you want to build like a lot of companies they do e-commerce. So just build like an e-commerce application. You can buy digital products on there or whatever, right? Just a similar, and then there's basic fundamentals of an app that are commonly shared across a lot of these applications out there right now. These big applications, like for example, an authentication system, work on login. How do I create an authentication system? How do I process logins? How do I, and there's a lot of these apps have, a backend that they communicate to in the database. So how do I take their data and store it in the database, right? For iOS, you might not need to know about the database. Like you can use tools like Firebase to make it easier for you to manage your database. So you don't have to build a backend. But like a simple like Firebase real-time data store makes it a lot easier to work with. So you can use that, which I used actually to build my Postme Fund application. So I think the main key is building that app. And I've heard this from other YouTubers as well, is like building an application or building whatever, like if it's not front end, building a back end or something that's most like what you're going to be doing your job. Like application that's going to be very similar to what you're going to be working on in your job, which most applications are e-commerce. Like what else is there? Like social media, news. Like these are, and they're not the most exciting apps, to be honest. Like for me, I mean, some people might find it really exciting, but like I'm. It's not the most exciting for me it's not the most interesting app I could build an e-commerce app, like a Walmart like application. But the thing is, you'll learn a lot of these
concepts
that like login authentication, right? Like this is something that I've worked in every job. Like every app, every website needs authentication. Right? Like, you have to secure their data, right? You can't just like let anybody go in and access the user. Another thing is a user profile, right? User profile is
true.
Like everybody has some user profile on almost every single website. Another thing for e-commerce is like a checkout, like a payment system. Like integrating with Stripe or PayPal. That's very essential.
Oh gosh! Wow.
Another thing is like maybe like lists. Like for example, in iOS they have table views, which is like a way to render your lists. A lot of applications have lists. All Facebook, Twitter, they all have some type of scrolling list that you go through. Just learning how to render that and build that out is key. So I think looking at these major applications, looking at what are the most common set of features that are shared among a lot of these big applications, is something good to start off on and look at and be like, hey, I need to learn how to build this. How do I build an authentication system? How do I build a scrolling list where I can show a list of items, etc.? How do I build a profile where you can edit it, update it? How do I log out? How do I persist my users' data in the database?
Gosh, yeah.
What are the libraries I need to use? Those things you would think about, and then when you're taking your course, you just think about you don't even need to take the whole course sometimes. Some courses, one thing that a lot of courses might do is I've seen is they might they might have like a lot of apps that they're trying to build in the course, like Uber clone, WhatsApp, blah, blah, blah. You don't have to build like a WhatsApp, like all these clones, to get a job. Just focus on whatever clone or project they're working on that's most relevant to.
It covers those fundamentals. And
covers fundamentals, yeah. It covers fundamentals and covers like the set of features that you need to learn how to build in order to get your job. So it's honestly, it's not that easy, because it's easy just to take a course start to end, right? That's what we're trying to do, is just take a course start to end from schooling. But you don't necessarily need to do that. And then also with that, yeah, again, there's, if I'm going to take example of front end development, there's certain technologies you need to know that you want to make sure that the course is teaching you that, right? So for example, front end development, you need to know JavaScript, HTML, and CSS, right? And also some framework. So React, Angular, Vue. Those are the most top 3 frameworks right now that you can get a job with. I think React is still the most in demand, so I'd probably learn React. But
is that why you switched from iOS to React Native, or?
Yeah, that was part of the reason I switched to iOS React Native, was because React Native was becoming more popular and trending. And also, I just wanted to learn JavaScript. I think we can get more to that later, like the transition.
True.
Because that's like a whole other discussion, but that we can talk about. But just focusing on how to get your job, right? In terms of what resources I can use online and how to go about it. Yeah, just focusing on building that portfolio app with a set of features that are commonly used in companies, that are commonly built in companies. You could take that course online, but don't just rely on the course to teach you everything. I think that was a mistake that I made also in the beginning. I learned a lot in my internship. So that was my first job, was an internship, a 3-month internship. That I realized during my internship, I was like, I missed out on a lot of other things I could have learned in this process. Because when I was taking the course, I was literally taking it from start to end, right? But the course was great. It taught me a lot of things, but there's also things that I could have learned in iOS development, like on the side, like reading other resources and looking at other YouTube channels. There's a lot of, the difficult part is there's just so much content out there. There's so many teachers out there nowadays that it's very hard to find one. But yeah, just start with one, with the most popular one, maybe particularly a teacher that's probably taught a lot of courses and they've all done well. They all got reviewed well. They're all very popular. Probably stick with that teacher, and then just work with that teacher's course. And honestly, I think that, I don't know if they still do promo codes for Udemy, but I'm sure you can get it for pretty cheap, like maybe like $50, $10. So it's not like you're spending like, $5,000, $1,000 to take this one course. Like you're only spending like $50.
Sometimes they have these seasonal sales, like every like Christmas or every summer.
Yeah, there's a sale literally every Christmas. You can get it. I got it for like $10. So you can get it for like $15, to be honest. So like it's not a waste of money. I have so many courses I have like over 30 courses bought on Udemy. I haven't even taken
yes, I'm here too.
I haven't even taken all of them yet. So it's like it's just a $10 resource that you can add to your learning regimen. So just take the course, but don't lie as a source of truth. It's a great starting point, but it's not source of truth. In reality, in development, like when you become a software engineer, you're gonna have to look all over the internet, GitHub, Stack Overflow, YouTube, read articles. Like you're gonna have to be able to learn from a lot of different sources.
That's a good point you brought up too, because now you mentioned you have like 10 courses in Udemy. I think the best way people might be asked, what is the perfect course? Sometimes you need to diversify your content, and you might be able to gauge what is the perfect course. And also definitely look at the year when it was made. It's going to be a 5-star 2008 course, and you'll be getting nothing too.
Yeah. Good point. One thing I want to add on that is, yes, you want to buy the latest.
Especially for React Native.
Like a lot of these courses, yeah. Or iOS. Like a lot of these courses will be like, iOS 12. There'll be like an iOS 12 developer course. You probably want to buy that. You don't want to buy the iOS 9 one, which could be cheaper. You want to buy the latest course because technology changes so fast. Like the iOS, or not iOS 12. iOS 13. iOS 14 is the latest one. iOS 14 course. And yeah, you want to buy that course because that has the latest APIs, etc. And it has a lot of the courses are about the same in my experience. Like they take, a lot of them they just teach the same things, but they just update the course content. So take the latest course. Yeah, that's a good point. Making sure you're taking the latest course, latest update course, not some like 5-year-old course.
True. And now you mentioned that too. It's like some people be asking, if I choose React Native or Android, would it be too late to switch over? But I think, can you tell more about that? Because I assume that some of the concepts that you learn from it, you could just easily apply to your other position right away. It's not really a radical change. You're kind of like,
if you learn React Native or Android, let's say, as
yeah,
a technology, like basically, can I transfer those
yeah,
skills or the
or
knowledge
vice versa. Yeah, yeah.
to another like software technology, like some other technology? Is that what you're asking?
Or I mean, like, let's just say you do iOS, and like, I don't like iOS. I think Android is better. Excuse me. Could I just like switch over? Like, you know what? My iOS knowledge still applies with Android. Just same thing. APIs.
Yeah, yeah.
Authentication. Same
Yeah.
concept. Backend data management. Or
I think it depends on which technology, but yeah, if we're talking, let's just say, for example, like iOS and Android, right? So, yes, there are certain concepts like how to, like for example, like design principles. Like you'll learn about like what's the best UI design or the certain design principles or human interface guidelines. For iOS, a lot of them, they transfer over to Android. Another thing is just generic programming. Once you learn how to program in a language, like it gets a lot easier to learn another language. So if you go from Swift to Java or to Kotlin, and another great thing about that too, if you're talking about iOS and Android, is Kotlin is very similar, I think, syntactically to iOS. So you could so it's good that you can transfer that over. The other things about the APIs, I think there's certain patterns, in design patterns that also are shared among iOS and Android, like MVVM and MVC.
oh
Right?
yeah.
I don't know if those are still very popular nowadays. I know like MVC was popular at one point when I started, and there was like MVVM and Viper. There's all these different design patterns, so you can use those design patterns across iOS and Android. But one thing that's unfortunate about iOS and Android is obviously it's a new language. So yes, it's easier to learn a second language once you learn a first one, but it's still a new language you have to learn. Secondly, there's different APIs. They have different. The Android and Apple APIs are different.
That's true. Yeah.
The way you design you develop your UI, like using for Swift. When I was starting, it was using Storyboard, and or you could do it programmatically using like UIKit. That's how you lay out your different elements on the screen. But now they have like Swift UI, but that was different than I don't have a lot of Android experience, but what I've learned is like they have what is that called again? It's the interface. What's the interface builder called again in Android?
Oh, shoot. In Android, I've never used Android for a while.
Yeah. They use like XML, right? And then they use actual visual builder, right? Like a visual interface builder, right?
I think they
that
do.
way, and I think it's called constraint-based layouts. Like there's
Yeah.
that is a slightly different. I mean, I think there's some similarity compared to God, man, I can't remember what the layout is.
We're kind of recording, so we can replay.
whatever the iOS layout. What is it called? I'm just looking up. Auto layout. Sorry. Auto layout is my experience is still different than constraint based and relative layouts. So it's a different. That's why you don't see like if you look out there, you don't see a lot of developers who are really experts in iOS and Android because it's learning each one takes some time to be an expert in. I mean, you might see a lot of developers who are really good at iOS and then like pretty good at Android because they start picking up Android, or really knowledgeable at Android, like have a lot of experience, but then they can still do iOS, but they're not as much of an expert. So that's one of the downsides of the two. I mean, that's why I'm more of a proponent of React Native, because you can build both iOS and Android using one technology, one language, one framework, React Native. So
what they're saying, it was like one deployment, all platforms or something like that. Like is it the saying like one? Oh, I forgot the saying too. It's like one
like
push.
Is it write once, learn everywhere?
Yeah, write once, learn everywhere. Yeah, or something like that, or deploy everywhere.
I think it's like learn once, write everywhere, or something like that.
Learn once, write everywhere. Yeah, definitely.
Instead of like write once, run everywhere, which is I think a Java concept. Write once, run everywhere.
Oh, yeah, I think so. Yeah, definitely. And some of the things that you mentioned, like learning about these APIs and trying to work with this Firebase authentication. I don't think this stuff is like taught in university, right? Like University of Minnesota, you learn like a little iota that probably help you play the role into your career growth. It seems like it's kind of independent in a way.
It's more independent. I think at the time I could have taken. I think because you took some courses, some computer science, but I could have taken those courses.
Yeah, go ahead.
I could have taken those courses, but yeah, there wasn't. I don't think there was any iOS course at the time. I don't recall. I don't think there was. Even if there was, I have worked with a professor before. My first job, I worked with a professor at like a adjunct professor at DePaul who he taught iOS. I think he also taught other computer science courses, but he taught iOS, and he told me that a lot of what they teach there is not really practical for getting a job for the real world. So I don't think they had an iOS course at the time. So I couldn't learn it there. Even if I did, I'm not sure if it would be the best way to learn it, to be honest. I think I would still have to learn it online anyways. I mean, I think in a lot of new technologies too, it's good. Online is the way to go because, you have on YouTube and you have Udemy, you have real, like, these developers work with these technologies in their jobs in a real world setting, like out in the industry. So they're basically teaching you what you need to know, like what do you need to know to get that job, right?
Yeah, it's like industry standard instead of academic standard. And
academic standard. So I don't know even if they had the course, I don't think it would be the best way to learn iOS. They definitely didn't have React Native. that was too new of a technology at the time. That was just, and it wasn't really embraced by the mobile app development community at the time. So
that's true. There's some interesting some snide comments snide rivalry, but Flutter, React Native, iOS, Android Studio. It's like almost like old guard versus new guard stuff going out there in the forums and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I'm curious though, like now, what you say about a hungry high schooler, don't have enough money for college, but want to pursue a mobile app developer career? Is it possible to just jump right into it, just find internships, just develop your own portfolio? Do you think it's possible with like less than $1,000? Yeah,
less than $1,000. So you could do it. It wouldn't be the best, best way to do it, but yeah, you could do it. The thing about it is the most expensive the biggest expense you'll probably pay for is the computer.
True. Yeah.
If you don't have the computer, assuming you don't have the required either MacBook, laptop, or the Windows computer to do it. So you need to get that. That's probably going to cost you like between, it could be like $700. It's going to be big.
And I forgot you have to buy a phone too. So assuming you don't have a phone.
Well, if you're doing mobile app development, most people have smartphones. So you honestly could just start with that. You don't need to buy. I don't think you need to buy. Like if you have an Android phone, let's say you want to learn React Native, which I highly recommend to learn first, rather than iOS and Android. But if you have React Native, you can just run it on either your iOS, or you don't have to have an iOS or a specific Android device. You could use either. You could have iOS or Android, and you could build, your application run on either iOS and Android. So
true, and you can just buy a Flutter. How is it? Firebase, is it have an expense to it? I think it's like a $25 developer account, and that's about it.
Yeah, I don't even know if you have to. I think it's free actually. I don't think you have to pay anything. It's a release in the Google Play Store. Yes, you need. I think
$25. Yeah.
But to use Firebase, no. But yeah, you just need to pay like $25, $50 to release your app in the App Store. But having $1,000 budget should be able to cover it. So let's say you spend like $700 or maybe $800 if you want a pretty decent computer to create apps. One thing to keep in mind is if you're creating mobile apps, if you're doing iOS development or React Native, and you want to create iPhone apps, you want to release an iOS app in the market,
it's more expensive. Yeah,
you're gonna have to get a MacBook, probably some MacBook Pro, Mac Air. I would recommend like the M1 chip if you can, but again, that's like $1,000, I think minimum. So that is a little bit expensive, but you can probably get away with a used. I bought a used older MacBook Pro, like a 2015, 2016. You probably get that for less than $1,000. So yeah, that's the biggest expense. The next thing is, expenses for courses, right? So, if you want to get really, if you want to be more budget friendly, if you want to get really tight with your budget, then like yeah, look for those promo deals for Udemy. Udemy, I think, is pretty cheap compared to the other websites. Like,
Yeah, definitely.
I just got like a Skillshare. I got a free trial for Skillshare. You know Skillshare? I don't know if you know what Skillshare
I
is.
heard of Skillshare. Yeah,
On the
definitely.
website, I did that, but that's not for programming. I did it for video editing. But I just got like a 2-month trial, and I think it's like $20 per month for Skillshare. It's more expensive than Udemy. I know Udacity is also a great platform, but again, that's not that cheap. You're not gonna be able to buy a course for $10. YouTube, cheapest route I think of all. But I don't know if there's a complete course. There are some instructors who teach like almost a complete course in YouTube, but
Yeah.
I would buy one of the Udemy courses, to be honest. If it was only $10, $15, 20, even $50 course, I would pay for it.
True. And before you buy a laptop too, make sure it's compatible with the iOS or Android apps. Like, I mean, like to run like the IDE itself. I think it's specific. Like, what you say, it needs to be quad core.
Yeah, it needs to be the right. It needs to be the minimum spec. So it needs to be like. I think if you want to, if you're looking for a computer, for example, for React Native iOS development, I think that I've discussed this like with with coworkers and my dad, etc. And basically, the minimum specs that you need is I think is 16 gigs of RAM. 8 gigs is what I started with initially. It's okay for It was okay for iOS development back in 2016, but for React Native, it was just too slow. It was just too slow to compile the application, and it just my like right when the bundler was running, it took up so much RAM, and then plus I have Google Chrome running, which takes up a lot of RAM, and it's just not enough RAM to basically even like develop off of that. You could, but it was just everything was so slow. So I would recommend like 16 gigs of RAM. I think the processor, you just need an i7. I don't think you need an i9. Maybe i5. I haven't tested on i5, but I had an i7. But you can still get like a used MacBook like 2016 that has i7, 16 gigs of RAM, probably less than $1,000. And then I would preferably get a 15-inch screen if you can. If you only can afford the 13, that's fine. But you might need a monitor. So I would recommend getting a monitor, external monitor. A lot of software use external, like majority of them use some type of external monitor because it's kind of hard to just program on one, even on the 15 inches, which is still pretty big. Like it's still kind of hard to do all of your work because you're gonna have so many windows and you're gonna have a lot of tabs in your browser. You're gonna have your IDE. You're gonna have your app, your simulator running as well. So yeah, buying an external monitor. I think trying to buy. Maybe you don't need an expensive monitor. You don't need like a 4K monitor. You can just get like a simple 1080p. You can get probably monitors for like $100 or something, maybe even less, maybe a used one. So just an external monitor somewhere to do your work. It doesn't have to be like the highest end monitor, the highest resolution. It doesn't even have to have high frame rates or etc. So
true.
Yeah. So basically external monitor. If you're doing iOS React Native, you need a Mac, you need an Apple computer, you need a MacBook Pro. I wouldn't recommend the desktop because you can't carry that around. I would recommend a laptop. So a MacBook Pro is more ideal. Mac Air is.
I think it get hot or something.
MacBook Air is a little slow. I've had coworkers who've tried to use that, and it's just a little slow running Xcode. But so MacBook Pro, maybe like a 2015, 2016, maybe even 2014. I still have a 2014 MacBook Pro. It's still it's getting slower, but it's still doable. But yeah, MacBook Pro would be more ideal. If you have more than $1,000, then yeah, try to go for like the newer M1 chips. But
true, and an also important part of your portfolio is you should be able to actually publish the app into the App Store. I think that's just a basic requirement. If you apply to a job, you should be able to do that too, right?
$99 every year. So that's another thing you got to budget.
$99 for every year for Apple. So I say I think React Native and Android Studio is like a cheaper route.
I think it's like 25. I remember paying $50. I think they lowered it to like maybe 25, but I remember paying $50 just one time. So that's something much cheaper than maintaining the $99 per year. It's easier. So that's also one of the barriers of becoming iOS developer was I think that point about paying that $99. A lot of people didn't want to do that. They didn't want to buy a MacBook Pro. They didn't want to do that. So yeah. So I think you should be able to do it, be able to learn it. If you get the laptop, you don't need the external monitor, but it's a nice to have. And then get the course. and then get the fee, the publishing, the fee where you have to pay to publish your application in either the Google Play Store for Android or the iOS store. So you should be able to get, I think, under 1,000. You should be able to afford all those together. I'm trying to think of another expense that you would need. If you're in high school, I guess, like, I mean, assuming you're factoring like food or because I don't think you can. If you're trying to factor all of that in, like your desk. Okay, I probably have a desk as well, like a work environment. Somewhere.
Yeah, assuming that he's not homeless, he just has $1,000 in his pocket, and I mean, I'm pretty sure he'll probably have that sort of prerequisites. Hopefully, I mean, if you're able to watch this YouTube video, I'm pretty sure you have a laptop of some sort. So,
yeah. And I think another point I want to talk about is starting from high school, right? Because a lot of people probably think you need a university degree, right, to get a software developer. I think certain software development jobs you probably do. Like, I know, like for a bit machine learning, you need like a master's degree. A lot of machine learning jobs, but if you're doing like front end development, some employers might not like that you don't have a college degree. Which is hard to happen, but that doesn't mean you can't get a job. It's still very possible to get a job. The most important thing of getting the job is portfolio and then the interview. Which is,
I was about to ask about that. Like, how was your career hunting strategy like? Because you have a BME degree, and that might raise some eyebrows to some recruiters. They'd be like, it doesn't exactly apply with CSI or like
computer science. Yeah, computer science. I mean, so the way I got my first internships, I was a little bit lucky because I had one of my high school friends' dad. He reached out to me on LinkedIn for this job, and then it was an internship too. So internships usually have lower barriers to entry, which you could start off. I think as a high schooler, take the internship. You don't need to get a full time job as a high schooler.
It's almost impossible, but yeah.
Internship is also really good because it's easier to get an internship than a full time job. Secondly, like interns also have a little bit more room to learn instead of just constantly delivering software. So, basically, you don't need it's not really a requirement anymore, like a full requirement to have a college degree. But yeah, I mean, they reached out to me about that, and the thing about my first job too, it was in the medical industry technically. Like it was
clever.
I worked in so it worked out pretty well for me because I had that biomedical engineering background. So first employer was like, hey, like you have an interest in medical devices. We build applications for medical devices, so it worked out pretty well there. So I was a little bit lucky in that, but my other jobs in the future, I didn't really have any. Even my next job after that, the recruiters, I mean, they might ask, why did you do biomedical engineering? And I've been asked that in interviews, but it's never been, I don't think it's never hurt me. I don't think it's ever hurt me.
True. And I think once you have your first job, regardless of how you got it, it's kind of becomes like the best way to move into other jobs right away.
The best way is just get the first job. The first internship and then job. Once you get your first job, like you don't really have to worry about your degree as much. And yeah, it's a lot less. It's a lot in software development, especially like front end and mobile apps. It's a lot less of a. It's very common to see people coming from random different backgrounds. So it's not that unusual that you're coming in not with a computer science degree. I think a lot of times they do prefer a computer science degree, but again, like I've worked with a lot of different iOS engineers. Like most of the iOS engineers I've worked with actually didn't have a degree in computer science. Like the first one I worked with, what did he have a degree in? I think he worked in like graphic design. Oh, he had a graphic design.
Same here too. I have like philosophy major or political science major. Like, how do these guys get all this good six figures? And I had to take this engineering degree. What
exactly? They didn't have anything like we had engineering degrees, which I guess could be more closer to computer science, or computer engineering. But they were taking like courses. They were in majors that were not even engineering, and they were able to. They're still good developers. They were to get hired in, and then they were able to like get in the industry and work on iOS or work on Android. So yeah, most of the funny thing is most of the iOS developers that I met don't even have a computer science degree, which is funny.
True.
I think that's just the nature for that technology too with iOS, because usually iOS attracts people who are more creative, like more artist, more I guess more right brain.
Like
So
Steve Jobs got kind of got personality.
yeah, like that. Same with web development as well. Like there's plenty of stories out there of people without I work with a coworker right now who's a good friend and developer who doesn't have a CS degree either. Like we're doing fine. So yeah, you don't need that computer science degree.
I have a question.
I think it'd be good, but like to be honest, like college is getting pretty expensive now. So it's
Oh, yeah.
if you're just looking to just get a software engineering job, then you don't really care about the college experience. Yeah, I wouldn't go to college.
Yeah, I mean, I'm more a little radical. I'm like, it's expensive and you don't really need it too. To be honest, that's kind of the route I'm heading.
I know. I remember Google. I think it was pretty recently, maybe like a couple months ago. I remember they part of an article about how in their hiring process they're going to remove the requirement for a college degree for software.
Tesla's doing that too. As long as you can make it, you're good.
Yeah. I mean, the thing about getting a Google is it's not like you can get a first interview at Google, but to get the pass the interview is the hard part. That's what that's where the majority of candidates like end up just
leak code every day and all that stuff.
It's a lot of the leak code, but I mean, yeah. So it's yeah, you don't need a college. You could honestly go. That'd be a great. If I could do that, that would have been amazing. Like if I knew about this in high school,
just respawn back in high school and
head straight into software and making money. Like I could have a full time job by the time I'm like 20 years old. It'd be crazy. So
oh my god, that'd be awesome.
That would be ridiculous. That would be really nice. But I mean, you could also like. If you don't get a first-time job either, you can also do freelancing. I know there's one other YouTuber called Stefan Mashuk that I follow a lot. I think he did freelancing when he was 18. He did a lot of freelancing projects, and it also helps you build your business skills. You don't make as much money, though. That's the downside, but you could do that as well. I think it's a good way to get. And I know another YouTuber called like Brad Traversy Media. His channel he also started freelancing that way as well, getting his software engineering by freelancing. So before transitioning to a job. So you can do freelancing as well. But to get a job, I don't think college degree is necessary. It's a bonus. I think it's a bonus.
I see. But does the industry matter? Like, do some industries have a higher standard of this type of mobile app developer compared to this other industry? Like, I assume like a biomedical industry would be like, yeah, I don't think I want a high school intern working on this compared to like, I guess, media or
I think it could vary on the industry. Yeah, it depends how I guess how forward thinking because a good way to describe it is forward thinking. So, like for example, if you work like at Google, which is like or Facebook, right, which is like the leaders in technology, they've had so much experience interviewing engineers, like just hiring so many software engineers. And they've refined their process so much to a point that we're like, all right, we found that you don't even need a college degree. We found that you don't need a comp sci degree in order to be a great engineer because we have plenty of great software engineers here or don't have a computer science degree, right?
True.
So that industry, if you work in like tech industry, probably they won't really care about your college degree as much. Maybe if you work in biomedical engineering, they're not as tech focused. They're more focused on medical devices.
I see.
They might not. They might want to have. They might require you to have a college degree. They might reject candidates or don't even want to interview candidates if they don't have a college degree if they're straight out of high school. So, yeah, it can vary per industry. I don't know the specifics of every single industry, like e-commerce.
Oh, that's true. Yeah, it's
health industry, etc. I haven't delved into all of that, but I mean, if you're starting out, I would start learning on it. What you can even do is you can even like create a resume and send it out and see if anybody replies to you. Even if before you even qualify for the job.
Just to know which one are the easiest ones to go through. Go into Wow. Yeah, that's clever. I like that one. Sorry.
It'd be an experiment to honestly see because that's pretty interesting to see if you're just out of high school, like 18 years old, like can you get a software engineering job without a college degree? As long as you have the skills, right, in the portfolio. I'm wondering if that's if that's a thing, if that's possible.
I'm pushing my brother to do that. He's almost near senior year high school, so I'm hoping that this video I could just share with him. Like, Sean's a sharp guy. He knows how to hack through and all that stuff. So,
I mean, it's not even hacking though. It's like more just like it's very unclear. It's not very clear. This process of getting your first software development job, the different pathways to get there is just not very straightforward. So it's like this could be like like another thing that we discover about it. Like we've already discovered you can get a software engineering job with a biomedical engineering degree, like both of us.
Yeah.
And we've known people with philosophy degrees and degrees that are not even in STEM, like in the STEM fields, to become full-time, like good software engineers. So
yeah, why not high schoolers? True, yeah.
High schoolers should be the next thing, to be honest. And that'd be if that's the case, then they should start gearing up education programs to teach more programming, and to focus on that, on how to turn a high schooler into like a full-time software engineer. Even if you work as an intern, you're still making more money than you do in college. If you intern for a year, let's say you intern for a whole year, which is like not typical. Usually intern for about 3 months in the summer. Even if you intern for the whole year, you're still learning a lot more, and you're getting paid compared to going to college.
Oh my God, that's true. And you can just get your full-time job later, like right after.
Holy cow. Full-time job like 19, 20 years old, which is pretty insane. Most people are getting their jobs at 22,
Man,
maybe after. Some people don't get into software engineering until like their 30s or 40s. Like at least they have another job and they transition into it. So,
yeah, that's true.
You can get a real head start. So,
Wow. And I'm also kind of curious, like, let's think here. So we talk about like, okay, so 18-year-old to 30-year-old. I'm just curious. My brother's also interested to be like, maybe what is a front-end engineer? And I'm a little bit confused of that too myself. Like I'm thinking, is it really just HTML, CSS, and JavaScript? Or is there like a certain tech stack that you just have to be familiar with, just like mobile app development, that you could just learn and you're pretty good for like 80% of the job prospects out there?
Yeah, that's a question that's like it's always a very common question with what skills do I need to be ready for my job?
True. It's almost like asking what is a biomedical engineer, and you're like, there's so much niches. I don't know which one's the right one.
Front end is a big. I mean, front end development. When you call yourself a front end developer, or when you look for a job that's front end, it's typically web development. That's what it's typically for. It can include mobile app development, especially recently with React Native. A lot of these front engineer jobs are like, it's nice to have, nice to know React Native or have that skill as well, because a lot of companies like to build mobile apps too. It'd be nice for them to be able to build a mobile app with their web application. So, but yeah, typically it's front engineer is usually building nowadays with the current technologies. It's usually using either JavaScript, HTML, CSS. A lot of times, some companies might use like Ruby on Rails, which is a little bit outdated. I wouldn't recommend learning that because it's more outdated. Or you can use like Python, Django, Flask. You can use that as well. You can use, I think, C# as well for certain web development. I think you were able to use Java, but I don't think anybody's doing that anymore. There's also like PHP as well for web development. But front end, the role of front end developer, just basically in general, it's more just building the user interface in the web. If I had to sum it up, that's basically what it is. Because the front end is basically what you see or what the user sees, and the back end is more about the database basically building out the database, the different cloud services you have to use in order to connect your APIs, etc., with the database and blah blah. So
you said like 16 different things in there. It sounds like mobile app development is like much more easier to get into than just a general front end engineer. Or
I would say, I started off doing mobile development.
Okay.
But if I had to rank the easiest things to start out with, I think honestly web might be easier to start out with than mobile.
Wow.
Because if I look at the different technologies you need to know nowadays, like the most trending technologies for web and mobile apps, like if you look at React, right?
That's
React Native is very similar to React. So it takes the same principles. But the thing about React Native is you need to know like some iOS and Android, which is a little bit more difficult in my opinion.
Oh God, yeah, it's true.
And I think you have to know less and less nowadays. But yeah, you have to know iOS and Android. Web development also is you learn HTML and CSS, which HTML, like the basics HTML shouldn't be too difficult to pick up. You don't need to know like every single HTML element, how to use every. You don't have to have the whole thing memorized. Just got to know how to use the most common ones. And also CSS, you don't have to be a CSS expert to get a job. I know that's a common question for web development. Like, do I need to be a CSS expert? No. Like, you just need to know how to use CSS and like, the basics of CSS. But I would say front end. I would say like, yeah, if you want to start out like being a front end developer, like web development is probably easier to start out with. Mainly because the mobile app development is you have to deal with Xcode and Android Studio, which is that's another thing you have to learn. It's another thing you have to on top of learn. With web development, all you really need is like VS Code, which is like pretty minimal. It's a great IDE. It's not overly complicated. You can make it very complicated if you want. You can add extensions, etc. But at its core, it's a pretty minimal application. It doesn't really overload you with all these like tools and features that you can use on it. And then I would use, and then also you use like typically just the browser, which you're used to using. And then, yeah, I mean, that's really all you need, like to start running it off, like start running your web application locally. When you want to deploy your application, you might have to use like another, web hosting service like Heroku or AWS or Google. They have services. So, but in the beginning, you don't have to learn Android iOS, which is something you would have to do with React Native. You don't have to be an expert with Android Studio or Xcode. Like you don't have to be much of an expert as you do like being a full-time iOS developer or full-time Android developer. But you do need to understand there is some difficulties with that because like if you want to write bridging code, which is basically code that you need to like basically communicate with some type of iOS or Android API directly, you're going to have to write some bridging code, which includes for iOS Swift. You have to write a little bit of Swift, but for Android, it's a little bit of Java.
True. So, and I forgot, you have to count like the different Android versions as well. I think iOS.
Yeah, there's different Android versions, iOS versions. You have to keep up with the APIs as well because a lot of the React Native frameworks and libraries that they built usually just communicate with the APIs, and if there's like a new API, then they have to build. The library has to create a new version off of that, and then sometimes it's tricky to find bugs sometimes too because like you might see a bug that you think it's only on the JavaScript side, or on the React Native side, but then it's like no, there's a bug in the API. You have to dig deeper, so it can get complicated to be honest.
True. You said it's like the Wild Wild West in a way, doing React Native.
Wild West. Also, React Native is newer too, so it's a little bit. It's not as big of a community as like just the whole front end React community. The React community has been there longer, so it's more established. And secondly, HTML and CSS have been around for since the web started. So basically, like you can find all your HTML CSS questions on Stack Overflow online. React Native, you might not be able to find all the answers.
It's always different.
Or new features you want to develop. Like you might have to be a little more creative or dig deep, and it can be difficult. So, and if you compare that to iOS and Android development, like those are the other two you can learn, or Flutter. But with iOS and Android development, those are also I've noticed that they are a little bit difficult to learn sometimes, especially with the IDE compared to web development. Like with iOS development, you have to really you gotta know Swift. You gotta get pretty familiar with the language, and then also the Apple APIs can get a little bit confusing when you first learn it. And also just the interface builder, you have to learn, like get used to learning that, etc. There's also like a lot of like other code in there, like that's more like architecture related code, like files in there that you might not understand. There's like like if you attach a framework to your iOS project, it's not very straightforward. As like using npm, which is the dependency manager for front end for like web development, or also React Native. just to install a library. So yeah, I would suggest, and also I think JavaScript is, in my opinion, is easy language to pick up than like Swift or Java or Kotlin.
I agree, definitely.
But it's a lot less frustrating to pick up because those languages are they're more strictly typed, so you can't develop as quickly, you can't write code as quickly. It is nice because you get the type check, you get the type checking, which is really nice. Better type checking, but yeah, it's just can be frustrating for like a beginning developer. So I think the best way is JavaScript is a great language. I heard Python is also a great language to start out with, but usually you don't build. Most front end jobs are not using Python. I think most of them are using JavaScript nowadays. So if you want to do a front end engineering job, I would most likely start with web development. And then what you could do is a lot of web developers, if you want to learn a mobile app, you would just go from let's say you learn React, you would just start learning React Native on the side. Or you find a company that you get hired into a company that is using React Native, and you can learn the stacks there. So so I think web development is the best way. Not to say that if you learn React Native you can't get a job. You can still get a job, but another factor to consider is just there's a lot more front end web jobs than there are React Native, but there are also a lot less React Native developers than there are just normal front end web developers. React front end developers. So there is still a good demand, really good demand for React Native. It's just, I think like overall, from a beginner's perspective, I think that web development is easier to get into and learn than mobile development. So
true.
Not to say you should just automatically go to web automatically. Like if you want to work on user interfaces, developing UIs, doesn't mean you just have to do web. Like if you really have a strong passion for mobile app development and you like mobile apps a lot more, which I like mobile, I was more interested in mobile apps than the web, but now I really appreciate the web. I think the web's really interesting. After learning more web development, don't let that stop you. If you have a burning passion to develop mobile apps, get into React Native, get into iOS, get into Android, you can still get a job there. Or Flutter. But Flutter I can know too much about, so like I'm not going to speak a lot on Flutter. The thing is, I think the one thing though is Flutter. I don't see a lot of Flutter jobs out there right now. So
yeah, it'll probably stay that way because React Native is just dominant, man.
I don't see a reason why. I think the biggest advantage of Flutter is just you can run in the 120 FPS, which a lot of screens are. Like my phone, my new phone, my Samsung phone, supports 120 FPS, but I don't know if that's even an important requirement for apps to be able to render in 120 FPS. So yeah, I would stick with React Native, iOS, or Android. Those are the technologies I would stick with.
Cool. And I guess it's gonna be a really hard transition, but it's going to health. I know you're like a health enthusiast guy. Like you did keto, and was it paleo? We just eat all meat or something like that. I don't know what kind of diet that is. Carnivore diet.
I thought this was about software engineering.
Oh, I mean, like health is important as a software engineer, right? You can't software engineers as couch potatoes, but I think health does play a role into. Like, look at this. You move to multiple different jobs, man. Like you're able to scale quickly. It requires someone with a lot of young, warm blood just to move around fast, and I think health played a big role into that, right? So.
Yeah. Health definitely, mental health and physical health, I think both play a big role in software engineering. So like coding by itself, if I leave out the job aspects of it, coding by itself requires a lot of concentration and focus. I think that is one of the barriers, to be honest, of software engineering to get into it is being able to sit there at a computer for 8 hours or maybe longer a day, staring at your code, focused. I'm not saying you have to program for 8 hours straight. You should probably not program for 8 hours straight. That's too much. yeah. Being able to program maybe an hour blocks, 2 hour blocks, sit there, focus, and you have to almost get into a zone. Ideally, you get into like this coding zone where you're just like in this flow state of like, you don't like all the other distractions in your brain are just kind of they're not really there. They're not really, you're not really thinking about them at the moment. You're really just focused. It's just you and the code and you and whatever is in front of you, your computer, your code. So that is important. That's one thing that's really important is being able to concentrate and focus on what you're working on for long periods of time and deal with that. And one way you could deal with that is you could do like meditation. You can, I like to exercise a lot. I think one thing is it helps helps me to think better and think easier. Like when I work out, I usually have a lot more energy, like mental energy as well. So I can last longer. I can program longer for hours. Also, it just gets me more excited, more motivated to program more. So, and also physically, it's good for your physical health as well. Like you can stay in shape, which is something that it's easily to get out of shape when you're sitting at a computer all day. I mean, most jobs, most like white collar jobs nowadays, they most people work at a desk at a computer. But
True.
It's good to just go outside and go work out and get some fresh air occasionally. Like when you program, like don't sit there for 8 hours in your chair. I've done that before. I still do that sometimes. But if you have the chance, go outside, get some fresh air, take a break. Another good technique that's really helped me is doing Pomodoro, which is basically you work in like intervals. You work in these different set intervals of work time and also break time. So for example, in Pomodoro, you can work for 25 minutes straight, and then after that ends, you get a 5-minute break, and then after that ends, you go back to work 25 minutes. So it's basically just like an interval of working and resting. And that 5-minute break is up to you. You can do anything you want. You can go watch a video on YouTube. You can play a video game. You can eat. You can sleep. I don't know. You can do anything you want. Basically, it's just basically time for you to do anything. But it's a good way to work because working, like it can get really draining to work in a huge segment of like 3-hour, 4-hour segments, which sometimes some situations it's actually good. If you're really in the zone, then it can be really helpful. But if there's times where you're getting stuck and you're not thinking as clearly, then it's probably a good time just to stop, put the computer away, walk away, maybe take a break. A lot of times I've solved problems where I've gone to a hard problem, like a bug, where it's just like I couldn't figure out. And the longer I stare at my computer, like it's not going to help me. So I stepped away and literally instantly, I'm not even kidding you, within a minute or 2 minutes, I'm like, wait, why didn't I think of this? Just like, so sometimes some movement, even just walking around, can help you overcome these problems that you face, which is very common in software engineering. So that's important. Dieting is also important as well. Making sure you eat healthy. I'm more of a believer in keto and low carb, so I like to eat like high fat, protein, mainly fat, low sugar, low carbs. Stay away from sweets. Stay away from breads, any sorts of carbohydrates, because those things, like I think the main problem with those, like based on what I've read about keto in terms of keto, is carbs can like make you sluggish. They might give you a jolt of energy in the beginning when you first eat it, but then after time you get this like this carb crash. I think it depends on different individuals, their bodies. Like some people might not experience as much. Some people it might hurt them a lot. I know for me, if I eat a lot of carbs, my heart starts racing and suddenly get this crash. So it's like actually the best way for me to work. For me, if I eat a high fat diet, or if I eat high fat foods, like maybe in the morning or lunch, I usually have a steady amount of good energy throughout the day. So that's important. Making sure you're eating the right foods, and also just making sure you have other hobbies and do other things in life besides just program all day. Because it's very common you see in the tech industry that you just think that all these software developers, all they do is just code all day, right? They go to their jobs and they come home, or even students, even college students, they just code during their they just code during their courses or lectures, or or in college, and then when they go home they just code, they just keep coding, or they just code for fun. Like everybody just codes for fun, which is great, by the way. Coding for fun is like a great plus because you learn a lot, but it doesn't mean you have to always just be coding all the time. So like it's good to take a break, maybe get you'll eventually learn. I think when you work in software engineering, like for a couple of years, you'll eventually get to this point where like not everybody, but some, I think a lot of people get to this point where it's like coding is not your life anymore. You're still like everybody else. You just work in the tech. You just work with tech.
Almost like writers burnout too sometimes, right? Like sometimes
yeah, and it's easy to get trapped in. Not really trapped, but it's easy to kind of get. Like there's this whole like with the tech industry, there's this whole like what's really attractive about it is like you get to work on really cool stuff. So it's really easy to be like, hey, I want to be. It's really easy to get sucked in to be like, hey, I want to be like, I'm super passionate about this technology. I'm just going to work on it all day. Maybe even create a startup off of it, which a lot of developers try to do. But again, you gotta make sure that you got to think about your lifestyle and what kind of life you want to live. Because again, if you're working in a software job, it's your job still. It's not your whole life. You still have, you're still a normal human being. You're not just some AI robot who just codes all day. So being able to have some hobby or things outside of coding that you like doing, just keep exploring that. If you like working out, if you like sports, if you like music, if you want to take a new hobby, like do those things. In the beginning, it's kind of hard though when you're learning though, because you do need to code a lot in the beginning, especially if you want to get a job as soon as possible. Like the faster you want to get a job, the more you're going to have to put time into it. But I wouldn't don't burn yourself out. That's the biggest, I think that's a major problem, major concern that happens, a major issue that happens with a lot of software developers. They burn out with code, or maybe even with their jobs. Like they just sit there and just code all day. And once you do something for too long and you're not seeing a reward from it, or a huge reward from it, it can get, that's when burnout starts to happen. If you go to the gym for 8 hours a day, if I go to the gym all day and I just stay there and I just work out every day and I do that for months, I'll probably get sick of the gym eventually.
Yeah, that's true. It's good to diversify your life in a way. And it's kind of random I brought this up, but one thing about the keto thing too is I think it helps stave off that riders burn out sometimes, because food does kind of play a role into like clogging up your mind when you're thinking about problems too. So I think keto does play a role, and also you did mention it's a lot of sitting down. You could even burn fat too as a keto. Like when you eat keto, you kind of burn fat easily more than compared to eating carbs, right? Like when you're just sitting down all day, you're still burning a lot of calories and all that stuff. So
you put your body into ketosis. I'm not a keto expert, but like your body gets put in a state of ketosis where you start burning fat while you're sitting. So that's the benefit of the keto diet.
True, definitely. And I'm curious, what kind of hobby are you doing? Is it kind of like you're doing filmmaking now, right?
Videography right now. I just got into it like last 2 weeks, so it's a fresh hobby. But it's like something just to kind of get my mind off of. I think it's a hobby that kind of really is I'm trying to push my creative side more. I'm trying to delve deeper into that side of who I am, the creative side, because I do have some. I think I have some creative potential. I'm not going to say I'm not some Van Gogh artist, right? But I think I have some creative potential in there that I kind of want to explore. So one way to do it is through filmmaking and videography. So what type of filmmaking and videography am I doing right now? What I'm trying to do right now is I think I'm going to do like videography for real estate tours. So a lot of new homes that need to get sold. They usually a lot of them have pictures, nice pictures, but along with that is usually they market some type of video where you can watch it and see what the home is like. Another thing that I'm interested in is also doing like product ads. Like one YouTuber called Daniel Schiffer, who does a lot of videos on taking cool cuts and shoots and creating these new product ads videos are also like really interesting to me. So I think I'm going to do that. Another thing is trying to create videos for like local businesses eventually. I think more in terms of like, a lot of times when I approach a hobby, I like to think in my mind, like, can it make me money too? That's why I'm mentioning like real estate. People are probably wondering, why aren't you doing like some like, travel video, which you can make money too, I think. But right now I can't travel right now because it would be awesome, but I can't travel right now because of COVID. I can't travel to like cool destinations because of the pandemic. But
it's true.
Yeah, right now I'm just kind of in this exploratory phase of like trying these things out. Right now I'm just learning. I just want to learn like how to basically take good footage, and also how to edit videos as well. I want to learn those skills because I think those skills will be useful for me, if I need to start a YouTube channel, right? Because almost every YouTube video has some type of editing, right? So
true.
Like,
I'm curious. Do you think that your current job as a front end engineer is almost like a release for filmography because you need to have that eye of UI design in a way and just
I think there's some overlap. I think it does help because I think one reason I liked front end development and mobile app development was I was really engaged with the UI design. I was really interested in that, like how to create a great user UX and also UI for the user. So I think my eye for that UI design, yes, does transfer a little bit over. I think there's also a creative element in that too, in terms of developing UI because there's multiple ways to code up a UI. There's not always just one way to do it. There's different approaches. So like with videography, I think that eye for the UI kind of maybe transfers over a little bit to filmmaking videography. I've always appreciated really stunning videos. I think for example, one thing that I watched recently, one film that I watched, I'm not like a film expert and I'm not the biggest film enthusiast. I do like films. But one movie that I watched recently was Tenet, which had really good shots, like really good amazing directing, stunning footage, like the shots that I took in that movie. And I saw that and I was like, holy crap, this is amazing. Like some of these shots are incredible. Some of this editing they put in is just incredible. So that was really cool to me. And yeah, I'm more of a visual person. I'm a highly visual person. Like even when I learn, I like to look at diagrams and learn things that way. And so for me, I think it just aligns more with who I am. Like, some people might prefer, they're more auditory. So like to listen to things like music, or some people might be more like they like to write, or read. But I like watching videos. Like YouTube is one of my guilty pleasures. Like it's the platform for me that I probably have a problem with in terms of like getting too like watching too many videos. Like I just consume too many videos. Like, some people have problems looking at their Facebook feed. Some people might have problems looking at Instagram. Some people might look at TikTok. Like they're just consumed by that. I'm consumed by YouTube. So I just love watching YouTube videos. I love learning that way. I love watching cool videos that way. So for me, like videos is something that I've always been interested in. I've always thought it was really cool. I remember when I was in high school, I created I don't know if it's still on my personal account, but on my personal account, I have a video that I edited this video. It was for a physics class where I created this video describing how they're like basically describing physics concepts, but in sports. So I took like footage of like tennis players. So I used to play a lot of tennis. I took.
Wait, do you think we could bring it up like in a video, like in YouTube right now? Like,
let me look it up real quick.
Okay, here. Oh shoot, my laptop. Oh, it froze. Wait, can you send me the link?
Yeah. Let me see. Let me see if it's still on my channel.
Oh shoot, my computer.
88 views.
My computer just froze. Okay. Is that the video?
I'm literally playing it right now. I'm seeing. Okay, this video is from 2011. So be ready for it to be bad or not poor quality. But it's not, I haven't seen this video honestly.
Oh, here, I'm gonna share the tab. Is it physics of soccer? Okay, here.
I haven't seen this video.
Okay. iMovie transition.
Look at this 2011 video.
Oh, sorry, what?
I just basically I took footage from tennis, like these videos of pros practicing the golf, rough on the golf practicing.
Oh wow!
So it's not a lot of editing, just a little bit, but still, I had a lot of fun creating this video. Like, dude, I spent a lot of time just sitting there, like editing this, and like I had a great time like finding videos as well. I was obsessed with like watching tennis videos, especially like practice. Like nobody likes watching practice, but I do because like you get to see like the player and the ball, how they hit it, and like you get to see how the ball rotates, etc. Like, you get a really close up image. So I had a lot of fun, and I did soccer in that video as well. It's later on in the video, but I had a lot of fun just, you know, finding the footage, editing it, and creating this like. I don't even know if honestly you learn that much about physics in the video. You probably don't.
Yeah, isn't it just?
Because I think I talked about like Bernoulli's principle at the time or something, but
Bernoulli's principle.
I don't even think like you don't even learn anything about physics. I just made this like cool video about.
Just slap some physics terms in it and say, "Yep, that's."
Yeah, you just slap some physics terms in there. So like, yeah, just I enjoy making the video. I also made a video for my Chinese class. I made like an acting video. I used to take Chinese in high school, even though I am Chinese, but I took Chinese anyways in high school, and I made a video with like two of my high school buddies. It was like this like skit that we made. I can't remember why we made it for. It was just for the class project. But there was just I remember doing that video. It was really fun doing the skit, and then also editing it as well was like super fun. So
interesting. I never knew that, dude. It's interesting that I thought that this filmmaking thing was just out of nowhere, but it seems like it's like a childhood, return to a childhood dream or something.
Yes, yeah. It's. I mean, I wouldn't say childhood dream. So my childhood dream was become an astronaut. But that's not gonna happen. So, not yet, at least. But it's something that I was really interested in, like as a kid. So that I really liked. I mean, I've always appreciated like really good. How do you call it? Just really good shots, man. You know, like really good videos. I've appreciated that. So, I think it'd just be cool to do that. You know. Other hobbies I used to do is like I play video games a lot. I used to play tennis back in the day. So those are good. Like tennis is really good for, just getting in shape as well. Video games you could play too as a hobby as well. But I wouldn't recommend it to do it all the time and do it too much. Like you could play it occasionally, but I wouldn't binge on video games like outside of coding or outside of your job, because it's like it is cool. I know streaming is becoming really popular. I tried doing that, game streaming, video game streaming.
Only made 20 subscribers and like only 1 hour a week of people watching.
Yeah, it's just I didn't get much either. I think I have like 15 followers on my Facebook page, but it's tough because you have to play a lot of video. You have to play a lot to get good, to get good content, and
true.
You have to be constantly streaming, consistent. And it's not really a skill. It wasn't really something that I wanted to take, basically use a lot of my time to do that, because I wanted to build some other skill. And I knew I've always wanted to, like last 2 years, I've always wanted to build some type of YouTube channel and something. So I knew that like video editing is important, and taking good footage is also important for, to build a good YouTube channel. So those skills will transfer over. That's why I started getting into this. My initial plan wasn't even to do filmmaking and videography. My initial plan was just like, hey, like I just need a camera, to do some like vlogs, etc. But at the same time, I started. My buddy in DC, who's also sovereign, he's a DevOps engineer, but he started doing photography on the side. And he, we took some photos over there at DC when I went over there, and some good photos. And then I got more interested in like, getting a higher end camera and like doing this videography thing. And then also watching on YouTube as well, exploring that, watching Daniel Schiffer's content, Peter McKinnon, who's another big filmmaker, YouTuber. So those are really cool to me. I saw that content. I was like, this is pretty sweet. So,
true. I mean,
it's skill to have,
I mean, I guess, in a good, cool way. Like you mentioned that, you're planning to make this, and I think a good way to like end this video is like, do you have any YouTube handle or anything that you want to promote?
I don't have a YouTube handle right now, but
yeah,
another video. The next time I will have one.
True. Or is there any other way that people, if they have any questions about being a mobile app developer, they can reach out to you, like Twitter?
Yeah. Let me. I think the best way to do it is, I do have Twitter, but I don't really use it. I think the best way is just email. To be honest, just email me. I could. Let me drop my email in here. You could probably post it in the video description link.
YouTube description, yeah.
But, reach out to me via email. see if I can.
I see. I could just.
And my Twitter handle as well. That might be useful for some people.
Oh yeah, definitely. I could add it to the.
Oh yeah, actually, it's good. It's good to add in this because I actually have an account called Shawn the Dev, which is for specifically for development. Let me. There we go. Let me. Yeah, here's the link. So the handle is Shawn the Dev 1.
Shawn the Dev 1. Oh wow. Cool. I'll make sure that everyone can reach out to you. And thank you so much for your time, dude. Just talking about all these tips about holy cow, like mobile app development and front end engineering. That's so much dense information, but it's going to be definitely be useful, man. So
yeah,
well,
no problem, man. I mean, I'm glad to talk about this. It's all interesting stuff for me. So, and I'm glad that we kind of talked about the other filmmaking. I enjoy talking about filmmaking, a little bit about that, and health as well, because I think those are, other fun things to talk about. So.